Trasferirsi all'estero è un cambiamento enorme, può sembrare molto difficile, a volte può fare paura, ma poi succede qualcosa, ci si inizia a sentire a casa. Buongiorno e benvenuti a Obiettivo Education. Ci sono delle persone che decidono di cambiare tutto, cambiare paese, cambiare lingua, cambiare lavoro, ma perché lo fanno? Che cosa li spinge a compiere una scelta così coraggiosa? Adesso lo scopriamo insieme con una persona che questa scelta l'ha fatta. Abbiamo con noi Fabiano di Langara College e adesso ci racconterà un po' della sua storia. So, hello Fabiano, welcome, thank you for being here. Please tell us something more about your story, who you are, what your job is, and how you ended up in Canada.
Thank you so much. Ciao a tutti. Thank you, Giulia, and all the folks at Obiettivo for the opportunity of being part of this project. My name is Fabiano. I'm originally from South America, but 15 years ago, I decided to venture in the world and move to Canada to pursue a dream of mine, which since was a little kid was to live overseas, brave the world, and experience something completely different than what I knew since the time I was born. And I ended up in Canada, and I've been there for 15 years now, working for this amazing educational institution and helping students achieve dreams and fulfill their projects and overcome their challenges.
And why did you choose Canada among all the other destinations?
It's actually a funny story. Since I was a little boy, my mom used to say that I would jump in bed saying that I wanted to go overseas. At that time, the US was a big destination. Everybody wanted to go to the US because of the movies and because of all the influence that America had in other countries and cultures. But during my university years, I got to have a very close friend. I established a very strong relationship. And this friend of mine, she left the university for like a year because she wanted to experience, go for an experience overseas. She wanted to go abroad to study, and she decided to go to Canada. So she came back from Canada a year later and telling us about her adventures, her stories, and I at that time I was getting ready and prepared to go on a venture and spend a little bit of time, very short time, overseas. And of course, because I was growing up with that idea of going to the US, I was discussing with her about my plans, and she said, "No, you're not going to the US. You're going to Canada." And I said, "But how can you tell me that?" Like, she said, "I've been in the US before. I studied high school there. Now I've been to Canada, and I'm going to tell you there is no place like Canada." So I said, okay. So she convinced me after some conversation. And then I decided to book my trip to Vancouver. And I'm talking about like 25 years ago, okay? So it's a long, long time ago. And then I went on this exploration. I spent a month in Vancouver. I absolutely fell in love with the country, with the city. I just didn't want to go back home when it was time to go back home.
So it was a good recommendation.
It was the best recommendation of my life.
Just tell your friend.
Yeah. And then I returned completely in love with Canada. And since I returned to, at that time, my home country, I decided to start supporting people who wanted to go overseas for an experience. And I started telling people my story about Canada, my experience in Canada and Vancouver. And then it's been Canada since then.
Since then. Ok, thank you very much for sharing it with us. Trasferirsi all'estero è un cambiamento enorme, può sembrare molto difficile, a volte può fare paura, ma poi succede qualcosa, un momento, una conoscenza, un gesto, un'esperienza e tutto cambia. Poi improvvisamente ci si inizia a sentire a casa. Quindi scopriamo insieme quando è stato il momento che ti ha fatto sentire a casa. So when did you really felt you belong to Canada?
I don't quite know if I can answer that question with precision, to be honest. I think I've never felt so comfortable in my life before being in Canada. I felt I was in a society that was not pushing me to be something. I was in a society that was accepting my way of being. So it removed a lot of pressures from outside, from the outside world. I don't know if it's because I was away from family and friends, so there was nobody with certain expectations about how I'm gonna do certain things or what I'm gonna say or how I'm gonna behave. So I could really embrace being somebody who doesn't have to watch for, oh, if I do this, then somebody's going to think that, or if I do that, somebody's going to think this. So I think it was kind of a moment of liberation. And perhaps that's how it made me feel home. And also the environment, the welcoming environment was really important in that process because it allowed me to be a little bit more comfortable with starting to express myself. So I think that's so there is no like turning point. I thought that it was. I think it was like it took some time, of course, but I think that from the very beginning, I didn't feel like I was on a foreign land, and I didn't feel. Yeah, I felt a little bit stressed, of course, because when you're moving away from home and when you're going so far, things are quite different, and you need to be prepared for how things are going to change. But I never felt threatened or I never felt unhappy or no, I just felt that I was okay from the very beginning, and then things start getting better and better and better.
That's very good to know, because sometimes leaving families and friends can be very scary, and maybe some people can choose not to travel because they're afraid they are going to lose those relationships. While in your case, being away from families and friends and all the pressures that the environment where you were born naturally, put on you, was like a sort of liberation. So it was actually a positive aspect. You were able to eventually experience freedom and independence. And I guess the welcoming environment of Canada. Canada is very famous for the welcoming environment. Was supporting your freedom. I mean, you felt confident to be free because the environment allowed you to do it. Can you give some examples of this welcoming environment? Because we can read everywhere, yeah, Canada is a welcoming place. But what do we really mean with that?
It's interesting because a lot of people tend to compare Canadians with Americans, right? Because we are so close. We share the border. So a lot of people think that we Canadians are the same as Americans. But there are quite visible differences that it's visible to us who live there. But if you are an outsider, it takes some time to really catch those differences and to really understand the nuances between the two cultures. And I think that really what highlights Canadian culture and society as a whole is the fact that Canadians are born into an environment that is truly multicultural. So with that being said, Canadians are more welcoming and more open to differences. So it's not like this is how we do things here and that's it. So if you are here, this is how things are done. And we don't care or don't appreciate or don't really bother with how things are done outside of here. Because it's such a melting pot that it allows Canadians to experience different cultures and different ways of doing things and seeing things, even within their own communities. Right, so they don't need to go too far to experience different opinions or different ways of doing things. And I think that really makes a society stronger and more respectful of differences, more respectful of other nationalities and other ways of doing things or seeing things. So that becomes really imprinted in the canvas of society in Canada. And people were legitimately or truly welcoming. I remember when I was there for the very first time, 20 plus years ago, when I was there for for my short experience. And I remember some encounters on the street with the strangers where I was a little bit lost, and people were not only actually telling me how to get to that place, they were actually taking me to that place,
Oh, really?
which is something that I've never experienced anywhere else, right? So yeah, I'm not telling you that everybody is like that, but what I'm telling you is that that's common in Canada. It's common for you to walk on a trail, and when you pass by somebody, somebody's going to say good morning or good afternoon to you, or they acknowledge your presence, you know, so you're not like just a ghost walking, or nobody cares about you. No, there also the other thing that it's interesting about Canadians is, and it's something that it means quite a lot to me, to my values, is the level of respectfulness that you can find. So everything is about thank you, I'm sorry. So there is this level of respect for the other person. So yeah, this is, I have my space, but I'm sharing this space with somebody else. So I have to be respectful of the space of the other person as well. So that's something that is very present in Canadian society.
From the very beginning, you never felt an outsider, because I know that many people either were born in Canada, but from foreigners, parents, or immigrate to Canada. So actually, many people share your story. So even if they were born there, maybe their parents weren't, or the best friends weren't. So maybe this respect, this shared respect, is because it's very personal to everyone who lives in Canada. So thinking about somebody, a student, even very young, because also you are young, but you were younger when you moved to Canada. Maybe not knowing the culture, the language, and so on, you never felt like an outsider, like, okay, I'm the foreigner, everyone is pointing at me because I don't speak the language properly, because everybody, maybe they're foreigners too, or maybe they share that point of life. Is that true? Can you confirm that?
It is, yeah. I believe that in Canada, you are not put on the spot as the outsider, as you said. It's more about, let me know about you, tell me your stories, your life story, other than, oh, so you're not from here. And that's, I think, the beauty about that. It's to people allowing you to be part of that, even if it's for a short period of time. But for that time, you are part of that community. You are part of that group. You are not an outsider. So, and then people will want to, provided that you want to share, of course, people will want to know about your story, where you've been, what you have been through, and then learn from your experiences as well, which is interesting. So it's very common for people not to feel as a foreigner and feel welcomed right away because of the way that things are managed.
I mean, you can keep your culture, your values, and be proud of it. You don't have to hide them. The only essential pre-requirement is respect,
Exactly.
which is something that I think we all share as a common fundamental value. Thank you very much for sharing also your opinion on this. Partire per un nuovo paese non significa solamente conoscere una nuova lingua, una nuova cultura, delle nuove tradizioni, significa soprattutto conoscere meglio noi stessi. Perché quando partiamo effettivamente il viaggio può essere fisico, si va da un'altra parte, ma molto spesso è un viaggio anche interiore, perché usciamo dalla nostra zona di comfort e ci mettiamo alla prova. Mettendoci alla prova scopriamo nuovi aspetti di noi stessi, del nostro essere. Per cui quando una persona decide di partire, non parte solo per la lingua, per la cultura, ma parte anche per diventare una persona diversa, una nuova versione di sé. Adesso vediamo assieme a Fabiano quali sono effettivamente gli aspetti che più possono cambiare, i cambiamenti più significativi che si possono avere dentro noi stessi quando scegliamo di partire per un'esperienza internazionale. Which are the most relevant changes that someone lives when deciding to go for an overseas experience, especially if, for a long-term one?
There are many, actually. I won't be able to speak to all of them. We would be here for hours. But I can share kind of the main highlights. And I will go back to my first experience going overseas and going to Canada. So a piece of personal information is that my experience to Canada was my very first international travel trip. It was my very first time flying. It was my very first time traveling by myself. So there were very significant things happening in my mind and my body when I decided to take that leap. There was the excitement, finally going overseas, and I'm finally going to Canada, which was very well sold by my friend, as I said. But also all the fears behind that experience, because it was the first time that I was going to do so many things in one single trip. And I can recall when I go back, once I returned, which I didn't want to, but I had to return. But when I returned, certain things start showing up, and some of the changes you won't notice right away. It will take time for you to start noticing them. But one of the things that I've noticed is that sometimes living our lives in our communities or in our families or amongst our friends, we don't notice our level of dependence of certain things and certain people, the level that we depend on them for us to kind of operate on a daily basis, right? And when you're removed from that scenario, then you find yourself completely isolated sometimes, because you cannot just go to that person or talk to that person, because you're not in the same space. Second, you might be able to maybe call them, but not if it's 2 o'clock in the morning. So you don't have easy access to certain people or to your supporting network, I would call, when you are far away. So that pushes you to start making certain decisions by yourself. And it starts showing you how dependent you are of certain situations, of certain people, or certain items that are surrounding you in your own community. So once you are removed from that and you are exposed to certain situations overseas, you start learning how to deal with that from a new perspective. So you become more confident, and you start to believe a little bit more about your ability to make decisions without having to perhaps talk to somebody, because sometimes you just have to make decisions on the fly, right? Also, you become a little bit more open to experiencing new things, because situations are going to happen when you are overseas. You are in a completely different environment, completely different language being used, completely different. The way that the societies operate are completely different. So you're starting to capture all of these nuances, and you start kind of comparing with the things that you were used to, and then you start learning how to perhaps see all of those differences with different eyes. And you start absorbing those differences, and you start blending them with your own way of being. And you start creating a better version of yourself, a version that is a little bit more open to differences. Because when we are within our communities, we are very used to our community's ways of doing things, right? But you are not so receptive to the differences that are surrounding those communities. And that can even happen in the same country or even in the same province or the same state, right? Because there are things that are very particular to each region. But then when you are exposed to such a different reality, you start learning how to absorb that and then pull things from that different reality and make that, you start creating a new reality of your own. Right. So I think that that's something that is very important as well. You learn how to communicate better. You learn how, and that's something else that Canada is amazing with, because of the multiculturalism in Canada. You are not actually learning only about one culture, which is the Canadian culture. You're actually learning about so many other different cultures, because you're interacting with people from so many different places that you're going to learn how people communicate in Asia versus how they communicate in Africa versus how they communicate in Latin America. And then you compare that to how you communicate in Europe, and it was like, whoa. So there are so many differences. So you end up coming back with this level of cultural awareness that will really take you much further. Because right now we are living in a world where we are relating with people from all sorts of parts of the globe all the time, right? So it is important to gain that cultural awareness as well.
I think it was really a deep reflection, and I really appreciate that, because we generally think about, traveling abroad gives you independence, makes you feel more confident and so on. But your explanation was really in depth. It makes you understand what you mean by being independent, because we don't even realize how much dependent we actually are when we live in our community with the parents and so on. And sometimes this feeling of independence, as you said, is due to the family, friends network, because we don't even realize how many decisions that regards our own lives are not taken by us, but by our parents, even if we are grown up, 20 plus year old. Well, when you travel alone, you really you own your own life with the pros and the cons that this implies. But of course, when you are independent, you got everything to gain. Of course, it's a life-changing experience in this sense, because of all the positive outcomes that this brings with them. Probabilmente prima di partire ci si chiederà: ma e se mi sto sbagliando? E se non ce la faccio? E se non sono pronto? E se questa non è l'esperienza giusta per me? È normale, è normalissimo avere paura e sentire queste emozioni. Perché? Perché quando si affronta qualcosa di nuovo, ovviamente il primo istinto è quello di essere un po' spaventati. Ma adesso vediamo insieme come queste paure sono assolutamente normali, trasversali, che riguardano quindi qualsiasi persona che decida di partire, anche la più entusiasta può sentire dentro di sé un po' di paura per ciò che non si conosce. Ma vediamo anche come è possibile affrontare e superare queste paure per trasformarle poi in punti di forza. So, which are the most common fears that you have experienced yourself, and also the students you're in touch with that maybe travel from all around the world to come and study to Langara College?
I think that there are many fears that will come into play when you are having an experience like that. And it also depends on whether or not you embarking on this journey have experienced something in the past similar to that. But if it's your very first experience, like I had my very first experience, it can be overwhelming sometimes. I think one of the key things is, what if I'm making the wrong decision of going overseas? Well, honestly, I don't think I remember that I thought about that when I did my experience for the very first time, but I was going for a very short time. So that was not such a huge impact for me. But now supporting students who are coming to Canada for periods of 2 years or 4 years or even longer, that definitely is something that comes to mind as top of mind, because you are going to be removed from your life for such a long time that all sorts of things come to play, right? So I think that the first year would be, if I'm making the right decision. Common fears can be, for example, am I going to be able to communicate? Are people going to welcome me in this new society, knowing that I'm coming from overseas? How am I going to be welcomed by people there? Am I going to be able to make friends, or maybe not going to be able to make friends because my friends and family are not going to be there? So am I going to be alone? So I think those are kind of the main fears that might come up. And also another one is whether or not the individual is ready to make certain decisions by themselves. right? So because they're going to be, again, outside of their comfort zone, outside of that supporting network of people who sometimes they might turn to get answers or to be able to make decisions. So, but there is one thing that really helps people overcome those fears. One thing that it's important to mention is that fear is going to be always there, regardless of what we are doing, be in our own country, in our own culture, or overseas. Fears are always going to be there, but sometimes they're going to be more pronounced than other times, right? Because you have sometimes access to certain supporting networks that really reduces the level of fear that you are facing. But fear is always going to be there. Now, it is very important to always be open to the experience. But going into these experiences, maybe the best way to face them and to overcome that fear is going into those experiences with an open mind and without too much expectation. Because things are going to be different. So if we go into that experience thinking that this is what can happen and this is how I'm going to behave and how I'm going to react or respond to that, that can be quite challenging. So you have to be open to the experiences, and you have to trust that once a time comes for you to make a decision, or once you have to do something in a certain situation, you have to trust that you're going to be able to pause, think, digest, and then take the action or make a decision. So you cannot suffer in anticipation. You have to wait for the moment, because by the time you get to the moment, you might have more information and you might be more prepared to then make a decision and make a move. So I think that being open to the experience is one thing. Understanding that you're going to a place where things don't actually happen the same way that they happen in your own culture or in your own country, right? So if you're going to through a situation or you're interacting with people are not going to be reacting the same way that people react in your community. So you have to be open for that as well and understand that I'm in a different place, things are done differently here, and I want to learn how things are done here. So then I can also make my assumptions, adjust myself to the situation, and learn new ways of doing things, not only the way that I am used to back home. So I think that that's an important step for you to be able to overcome some of the fears that will come up.
Thanks. Because we generally fear an action, but not being passive. So generally we fear, okay, what if I travel to Canada and that is the wrong decision? But we generally don't fear, like, what if staying here in Italy is the wrong decision? Because somehow we assume that staying here is safe, but sometimes being in the safe area is not the right path for you. So it's just taking a change, acting is of course more scary than just following the stream. And as you mentioned, things happen in life everywhere, regardless of where you are. If you stay here in Italy, if you go to Canada, to Australia, or to wherever, things can happen. And of course, the main difference is how we decide to react to those events. So in most cases, there are like negative situations, but of course, part of your personal change and development is how you manage to react to the events you can't control. And I guess in this case, you learn only by doing. You can't read books. You just have to put yourself in the condition of learning, of experiences, and learning how to react. Maybe you can make some mistakes at first. That's normal. But then you will remember because you lived it firsthand. And it was completely your decision because you are without your supporting network. You know it's your responsibility of the consequences. And so next time you will think more carefully. And this is part of the process of growing up, which is actually never ending because now we're no longer 20s, but we still make mistakes and learn from them. But we just have to, as you said, let us experience new things to let us learn to take new kind of decisions. And this is like the key that brings to independence. Not only we generally think about economic independence, but in that case, it's like a mental independence. You are free, you are capable of taking the decisions, the most important decisions that regard your own life.
Of course, when you are trying to think about an experience like going overseas and all the fears and everything, of course you're going to face fears because you're completely moving away from what you know and of doing things the way that you normally do. But there's no learning in that, right? So there's no learning in being in the place where you're comfortable. You're basically just doing the same thing over and over and over again. So the probabilities of you changing your future by doing things the same way over and over again are close to zero, right? Unless something happens that force you to change, things are going to remain the same forever. But when you put yourself into that uncomfortable situation, when you go outside of your comfort zone, then you expose yourself to these experiences that will shape the way that you're going to react to situations in the future as well. And you touched a very important point. Who are we to tell if we are making a mistake in staying in our place as well? Because if we are staying in our place and being comfortable for the rest of our lives, nothing is going to change. We are not going to do anything different. So even if you go and you have that fear or something might go wrong, it doesn't matter because at least you had the opportunity to experience that. There is always another chance to redo things and to recover things. Even if you make a mistake happens throughout our life, it's better to make them and let those mistakes impact our life positively in the future, then don't make any change with the fear of making a mistake and then not having anything at all. So living with regret is something very bad. So by exposing yourself to an experience like that, you allow your future self to look back, and even if there was a mistake in the middle of the way, to think, I'm grateful for that opportunity to make that mistake because that's helping me today to make the decisions I'm making today and to make the changes that I'm making today.
Mistakes help us to discover something more about ourselves, our personality, and so they are always positive if you look at them from the right angle. Quando si prende la decisione di viaggiare, inevitabilmente si scopre che le cose non sono esattamente come ce le immaginavamo. Per quanto ci sforziamo di partire con la mente aperta, senza crearci aspettative, le aspettative ci sono, fanno parte della nostra natura perché abbiamo bisogno di immaginarci qualcosa anche per sentirci più sicuri nella scelta e nel salto, nel vuoto che effettivamente stiamo facendo. Adesso vediamo insieme quali sono effettivamente le curiosità, le differenze anche culturali che più colpiscono gli studenti quando arrivano e si approcciano per la prima volta alla cultura canadese. So which are the most relevant or significant differences that strike foreign students when they start living in Canada?
The main ones is how welcoming the society is. That's a very important key point. Sometimes people feel a little bit, how can I explain? But they feel a little bit surprised, I think that's the right word, when they see that level of welcoming that the Canadian society provides to internationals getting into the country. Also, the multiculturalism that you're going to face. You are going to meet hundreds, if not thousands, of Canadians who are not born there. But they are living their experiences in Canada. They became Canadian citizens, and they are proud of becoming Canadian citizens, like I am, and being part of this very multicultural society that respects everybody. You are going to be very surprised with how Canadians tend to be very respectful. So you are always going to be hearing lots of sorries, lots of thank yous for everything. So that's very very normal. And sometimes people feel a little bit like, oh, why you're saying sorry again? It's not even your fault. But yeah, that's just the way that we do. We just say sorry. So that's how it operates. It is very important to keep in mind that time is valuable in Canada. So there is an expectation that people will respect other people's time. So differently, like in cultures, some European cultures or some Latin American cultures where you set up a dinner for 7 p.m. and people show up at 8, that's not acceptable in Canada. So we have to be aware of the time situation. In Canada, people tend to respect time quite a lot more. And that sometimes can be a shock because sometimes it's culturally unacceptable to be on time, right? In certain cultures. If you say, let's meet at 7, people are not expecting you to show up at 7. People are expecting you to show up at 7:38. But in Canada, it's completely the opposite. If they say 7, they want you to be there at 7, 7:02, 7:03 maybe, but be on time. So that's something interesting as well.
Molti ragazzi vorrebbero vivere delle esperienze all'estero, anche accademiche, anche abbastanza lunghe, ma vengono frenati perché temono di non essere abbastanza intelligenti, non avere voti abbastanza alti, non riuscire quindi a farcela. Però effettivamente queste esperienze sono per tutti o no? È necessario avere una media alta di voti a scuola oppure sono altre le caratteristiche personali che possono determinare effettivamente la buona riuscita di questo progetto, che possono permettere a una persona di farcela durante la sua esperienza all'estero? Adesso chiediamo a Fabiano quali sono effettivamente le caratteristiche più importanti che una persona dovrebbe avere quando decide di intraprendere questa esperienza, che con ogni probabilità non sono necessariamente dei voti alti in pagella. So, which are the most important skills that a student should have when deciding to go for such an experience? Are like marks at school so relevant in the positive outcome of their experience abroad?
Not necessarily, no. I don't believe that only those kids who are bright in school and have the best grades are the ones who have the ability or should be granted the ability to go overseas. I believe that the international experience goes much beyond academic readiness or grades. People are going overseas not only for studies, they're going overseas for a personal transformation, right? And personal transformation doesn't require grades. Personal transformation requires you to leave stories, to leave new realities, and live in situations that will push you to change. And that's not graded. That's a transformation that everybody has to go through. People will face it in different levels. People will react in different ways, but those are not things that you can attribute a mark to it. Those are things that just happen naturally. And grades, so the grades definitely is not the key point. The other thing is that not being so good in school in your home country doesn't mean that you're not a good student at all, because sometimes it's all about the methodology that is utilized in your school, the methodology that you've been exposed to your whole life. And by experiencing education overseas, you can also experience different ways of learning. You can experience different methodologies that might appeal better to you and might entice you to maybe become a better student and achieve better grades. But we shouldn't continue or persist with the idea that the grades are the only thing that defines us as human beings, right? I think that schools are going through a process of transformation to understand that the grade is not the most important thing, but the experience is really what matters. And I think that that's all about international experience.
I was thinking about the famous Albert Einstein's quote, which says that everybody is a genius, but if we test a fish for its ability to climb a tree, the fish will think it's stupid. So maybe we just need to put the person in the right setting, in the right environment, because generally we tend to associate ourselves and our mental abilities with the mark that we get at school. Like, okay, I failed my exam. It means I'm stupid. No, it just means that you have to work on your study methodology. But this is something we generally don't do. We tend to give a label to a student or to ourselves. And then this is like a self-realizing prophecy, because when you are defined as stupid because you don't get good marks, then you will believe that you actually are, and then you preclude yourself the opportunities to learn that you can be somebody different, especially because in Italy we are used to a school where we have to learn many things by heart and then to repeat exactly what the textbook or the teacher has told us in the same way, the same words. So it's more like a parrot methodology. It can be good to train your memory and to learn many facts and so on. But then for the people who are more like active, who can't really memorize so many information, this is simply not the right environment. Quando si valuta la possibilità di fare un'esperienza all'estero, molto spesso si pensa all'aspetto economico. Ci si dice: non posso permettermelo, sarebbe un'esperienza bellissima, ma è solamente da ricchi, noi non possiamo permettercelo. Adesso analizziamo un pochino questa situazione. È vero che le esperienze accademiche o le esperienze comunque linguistiche o formative all'estero sono esclusivamente per chi ha già un budget molto ampio, oppure ci sono delle opportunità che possono essere disponibili per tutti. Effettivamente le opportunità all'estero sono varie e possono anche differire per quanto riguarda l'investimento economico che è necessario sostenere. Adesso vediamo insieme a Fabiano quali sono le diverse opportunità e se effettivamente fare un'esperienza all'estero è solamente una cosa da ricchi. So Fabiano, what do you think? Is like living an overseas experience only for rich people, or are there opportunities also for common people with an average wage? What do you think? What's your experience and your opinion on this topic?
Yeah, definitely. When I went away for my first experience overseas in Canada, I didn't have the best financial situation, but I really wanted. And I knew that my family couldn't support me financially through that decision. So I had to make some efforts and I had to save money. So there's nothing that you cannot do if you don't plan properly, and you can start saving money ahead of time. You can look for opportunities, as you mentioned, that perhaps not the full package, but you might be able to find an opportunity to tailor your experience to bring the budget down a little bit closer to something a little bit more realistic to you. Depending on what you're trying to do and trying to accomplish overseas, there might be even scholarships available, bursaries or financial aid programs that are available to students, either from Canada, from the Canadian government, from the Italian government, from the European Union, from certain schools that offer advantages and incentives for students as well. So you have to take the time to plan, you have to take the time to budget, you have to make some sacrifices to save a little bit of money. And you also have to do a lot of research because you might be able to reduce your costs by getting funding, additional financial aid, or even going through opportunities that allow you to work a little bit, so you can also support financially yourself while you are overseas. So there are opportunities. So don't think that just because you are not born rich or because you don't have a large budget, you cannot do it. You can. You just need to pause, think, plan, and that can work as well.
Just to mention the famous saying, if there's a will, there's a way.
Mm-hmm.
If you really want to, you can also find a way. But of course, this is not an easy choice. This is not an immediate choice. So timely planning, planning ahead of time is really a key to success, to save money and to financially plan your stay abroad. In Italy, we are lucky because we also have the working holiday visa, so maybe students can also experience Canadian culture before taking the decision to attend university or a college there. with the working holiday visa, with a minimum financial expense, because then you're allowed to work. So again, if there's a will, there's a way. There are many opportunities, not only for those who come from a rich family, but there are many opportunities for those who want to find them. Il successo. Tutti noi desideriamo avere successo nella vita, ma fermiamoci un attimo a riflettere. Che cos'è che intendiamo per successo? Avere soldi? Avere una macchina grande? Avere una bella casa? La parola successo comporta tante sfumature ed è molto soggettiva. Ogni persona la interpreta in un modo diverso. Quando applichiamo la parola successo alle esperienze internazionali, molto spesso nella nostra mente si associa al fallimento. Ho successo oppure fallisco? È giusto o sbagliato? Ho fatto giusto oppure ho commesso un errore? Però molto spesso il concetto di successo va a completare, a integrare degli altri aspetti della vita che non corrispondono necessariamente al benessere economico. Per cui vediamo insieme, facciamo questo ragionamento per capire che cosa significa effettivamente avere successo quando si sceglie di partire per un'esperienza internazionale. So Fabiano, a very tough and deep question for you. What do we mean, what do you think a successful international experience is? What do you mean when you consider a student or a person to be a successful one? Now we're doing pure philosophy.
Yeah, and that's a very, very broad topic and very difficult as well, because as you mentioned, success can look very different for people, right? Each one of us develop or create an idea of what success looks like based on information we get from the societies we live in, from the families we are born into, the friends that are surrounding us. So finding out what success is, I think, requires a little bit of reflection, because you have to develop what success means to you. Because we sometimes are forced to think that success is, for me, is what it means for somebody else, right? So having the beautiful car, or having the large house, or having thousands and thousands of dollars of vacation every year. But do they actually mean something to you, or do they mean something to the outsiders who are looking into your life? So that's, I think, an important question to ask. So I think that for an international experience, it is important that you do a self-reflection before you go and try to establish certain goals. What do you want to accomplish? Like little things you want to accomplish during your experience. Maybe you want to learn how to communicate better. Maybe you want to improve the way you communicate in a certain language. Maybe you want to check some of your boxes in terms of places you want to go and experience during the time you are there. And then as you put that list together, you have some sort of guidance that will make you feel a little bit more proud about your experience and about what you were able to accomplish during the time you were overseas. But I wouldn't set up so high expectation goals because it takes time for us to actually come up with a conclusion in terms of what success looks like for us. I still don't have a perfect idea of what success means to me because I'm still trying to get away or move away from that perception that society tries to push us, that being successful is having this, and that. And trying to develop my own reality of success. So it takes time, but I think it's important when you're going to an experience overseas to kind of highlight some goals and some targets, try to accomplish those. Maybe that list is going to change along the way because you might learn something new, or maybe a certain goal doesn't make any more sense when you learn something else. So trying to make that list, but not create that as a fixed list, more like of a working project that can be adjusted and adapted as you move along. And then you can add more goals there. Once you start living that experience, you're going to learn something different that will create curiosity for you to maybe accomplish a different type of goal that you were not thinking about. And that's something that you can add up to your list. So having that list helps you to feel a little bit more accomplished. But in the end, I think that it's part of the experience that you will come out of it much better prepared than what you are when you actually start that experience. So that's no doubt about the person you're going to find after an experience overseas. When you compare them with the person they were before going into that experience, it's noticeable. Even if you don't have certain goals that you want to achieve during that experience, that change will happen because it's just part of nature, right?
Yeah, thank you for this great takeaway. So a key, not only for international students going overseas, but even for us in our everyday life, is just to set small, reachable goals so we can feel more satisfied, more motivated, especially when you are going to a different country with a different language, different learning system and whatever. The difficulties are many. There are many difficulties we have to face. And so setting small, achievable goals can help you feel successful because you can tick that little box. But it's not only the ticking of the box. It's like, okay, now today I'm 1% better than I was yesterday. Even if for little, you don't have to expect huge changes overnight, but little by little, as Fabiano said, setting many small achievable goals can help you reach your final goal. And above all, when you decide to go for this experience, there's no way you won't improve. It's impossible for you not to become a different and a better person. Simply by taking this choice, you are putting yourself into a stream, into a path that will teach you so many things, that will give you the opportunity to improve and to become a better person, even without noticing it. But if you create your set of lists, then you are going to notice it because you got them written down black on white. And so at the end of your stay, even if it's short, even if at the end you decide not to live in Canada for 25 years, but you decide to go back to Italy, you still have your list and you can say, look what I have achieved. And this is what keeps you motivating in facing new difficulties, because you know, I've done it in the past, I can do it even now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And people tend to believe that success has to be something really big, when in reality it can be as small as I was able to do this today, which is something that I haven't been able to do in the past. So even if it's something very small, if you can feel proud of it, that you did it, that's success. So it doesn't need to be something really huge. Even those small steps that you were able to accomplish, the small goals that you were able to check off your list, those are success as well. And that's going to push you to a future of doing more and more and more. And not looking at your failures as something bad, because as we talked about earlier, making a mistake is an opportunity for you to do things differently in the future. So it's a learning opportunity. Mm-hmm. So just try to look at failure from that perspective and make sure that you celebrate every single goal, even if it's tiny, as your mark for success.
Thank you very much. Bene, grazie mille a Fabiano di Langara College di essere stato con noi, di aver condiviso la sua esperienza, tanti racconti personali, soprattutto le sue opinioni, e aver condiviso con noi anche le esperienze date insomma dai suoi numerosi anni di vita in Canada, e a contatto con tanti studenti internazionali che effettivamente hanno preso la decisione di partire, di lasciare appunto la loro casa, la loro zona di comfort e di iniziare un'avventura che comunque li ha portati ad essere delle persone diverse, delle persone nuove e migliori. Quindi grazie anche a voi di averci ascoltato.